Hello, welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, how you feeling today, buddy? It's Super Bowl week. The Jets are doing a little bit of, it's early for spring cleaning, but maybe some February cleaning, kind of getting rid of the old guard. As Matthias Simon already says, let's start the restructuring. They're doing that, buddy. They're getting rid of a lot of the guys in that front office. How are you feeling today, Mike? What's going on?
They're halfway there. Maybe one day we'll talk about the Jets actually playing in one of these games, probably after me and Justin are long dead and buried, maybe in the year 3000 when
our kids
retake the earth.
Our kids will be doing the Jet Press Podcast. And
kids. We might be having a new different human species by the time the Jets end up. It'll be like Futurama with Blurns Ball. That's where the Jets will finally get their championship glory.
I got to watch Futurama, man. It seems like a really good show.
It's basically baseball, but they tether the ball to the field, and you got to smack it. Steroid use is mandatory.
Oh.
Pretty cool.
Okay. Stuff. You know what?
They hit balls into little holes, almost like ping pong. It's pretty cool.
That actually sounds pretty cool.
The bases explode. But moving off of Blurns Ball and back to football, we're going to go talk about the Jets making some moves higher up and on the coaching staff. A lot of those have been finalized. As always, there's Aaron Rodgers talk because Thomas Dimitroff had some enlightening comments on that. And we'll talk some Eagles-Chiefs because it's the Super Bowl and everybody's talking Eagles-Chiefs. Even that coworker you work with doesn't know football. He's talking Eagles-Chiefs right now. They are talking Eagles-Chiefs. So we'll do some too. Thank you guys for tuning into the Jet Press Podcast. As always, you know where to find us. Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcast, we are there. And we are on YouTube. You want to subscribe? You can do that. Just boom, subscribe. You want to donate 99 cents? You can become a member and you get priority comment reply. 99 cents. 6 cups of coffee. That'll last you. Think about that. Think about expense. That can get you what? Like, I don't know, 8 years of memberships.
Yeah.
You do the math.
We had Connor last week.
That's a pretty good investment. I'm not gonna lie.
We had Connor last week donate 10 memberships. Thanks again to Connor for that. I don't know if he's in chat, but still thinking about that. Appreciate it.
10 Yep, you can also donate if you want. Let's just get right into coaching staff talk. We'll get into Dimitroff just a little bit later. I want to go start with but I like where your head's at, comment section. We'll get to Aaron Glenn first because his coaching staff, we mentioned this on the last stream because Steve Wilkes was all but official. I think he got finalized right after we went live during that show as the new defensive coordinator. And then Tanner Engström got finalized as the offensive coordinator a couple days later. Those had been reported for a very long time, especially when it looked like Nick Caley was going to go somewhere else. He ended up taking the Houston job. Now the Jets have most of their staff ironed out, including position coaches. Charles London, formerly of the Seahawks, he's the quarterback coach. Aaron Curry, who went from kind of a big draft bust to a pretty solid coach. He was the inside linebackers coach with the Steelers last year. He'll be the linebackers coach with the Jets in 2025. Sean Jefferson stayed around. He is one of the few holdovers. He has survived. He coached with Adam Gase. He coached with Robert Saleh. And now he's going to coach with Aaron Glenn. He's the wide receivers coach.
Yeah.
I bet that was a Garrett Wilson decision. I bet Garrett Wilson probably liked Sean Jefferson.
He's the new Brant Boyer with the regimes, but he also has the Parcells connection there with Glenn, because they both, Jefferson played, I think, 1 year under Parcells when he was a receiver with the Patriots. Funnily enough, Jefferson and Glenn matched up as players, both in the AFC East during that time as well.
And he was a pretty good player in his own right. I mean, I think he had, 8,000 career receiving yards or something close to it?
Something like that, sure.
Pretty good player. He sticks around. Obviously, every position's finalized yet, but a lot of more. And Scott Turner recently hires the passing game coordinator. One thing I want to shoot down, because I'm pretty okay with this staff. Like, if I were to probably grade it, I'd give it probably a B+. It's a B+ staff. Like Matthias says, the only real experience we have in the staff is Wilkes. I get that in terms of like past experience at that level. Eric Washington, the defensive line coach, too, has some experience in DC. I get that this isn't full of a ton of experience. Tanner Engstrom, first time. Steve Wilkes, he was good in San Francisco, but not good in Cleveland, iffy in Carolina. I get why there's some hesitation. The problem I have is, and we've said this a lot of times on the Jet Press, about how you need to name viable alternatives if this guy is not going to be a thing. Like, who's out there? How many guys with past head coaching experience who are also good coordinators, how many of those guys are out there? What do you want, Kyle Shanahan to be the passing game coordinator? I know Scott Turner's not some brilliant offensive line. This is probably a role that he's good at. This is probably his level in the NFL. A passing game coordinator who could probably be a bottom tier OC if he got an OC job. That's what he is. This is what he's good at. I get that some people don't like the first-time guy with Engstrom, but you know what? Everybody wanted Tanner Engstrom. Everybody who wanted Ben Johnson thought they were getting Tanner Engstrom. Lions fans wanted to keep Tanner Engstrom. This was a desired guy. And now because what? He's not John Gruden as the offensive coordinator. Now you don't like him? Like, there's certainly some issues with this staff. Nothing glaring in my opinion, but this is a pretty good staff for a first-year guy in Aaron Glenn, who honestly, he's not been around a ton in terms of a coach. It's not like he's coached in 8 different places. He's coached in Cleveland, New Orleans, Detroit. So that's not a huge Rolodex. And I think he still put something really nice together.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the lack of experience, too. Aaron Glenn is trying to follow a very similar game plan to what they did in Detroit. And those staffs, if you look at that 2021, 2022 line staff, they also weren't super experienced. They had, on the defensive side, the big, senior defensive assistant, the one experienced guy they had was Dom Capers, who was there for a year. And then on offense, they had Anthony Lynn was an offensive coordinator. He was fired after a year. Deuce Staley kind of fills that role of, he's been around a lot. Like, he's not super old, but he's a pretty experienced guy. But they didn't have a ton of experience on those staffs either. It was very much develop your own, develop from within. That's clearly what Aaron Glenn is trying to do here. I'm not saying I don't know. I know it's going to work. I don't know. I really do like having Steve Wilkes on the defensive staff, as we talked about last week, because that hire, I believe, was already finalized by the time we did our show last week. That's exactly the type of guy that you want leading your defensive staff. And then you can develop guys underneath him, like an Aaron Curry, who, as Brian points out, is not related to Vinny Curry, but he is. I don't know if you knew this, Mike. He is a brother adopted, I believe. I believe Aaron Curry was adopted, and he is a brother with Eric Barton, former Jets linebacker.
Really?
Weird fun fact there. I think Curry is the one who was adopted. Yeah, no relation to Vinny Curry, but developing guys like that, like a Chris Harris, they brought in Eric Washington. He's not really someone to develop. That's another experienced name who's now the defensive line coach. The bigger, I don't want to say concern, but the more important part of the staff is going to be the offensive side of the ball. And that is very much contingent on if Tanner Engstrom is the guy. Clearly, they wanted Nick Caley. That was their top choice. It does not sound like Nick Caley preferred the Jets. Obviously, he didn't end up going with them. He was hired by the Texans.
I'm sure Michael Florida can give him a glowing review of that whole operation.
I'm sure it's partially that. And also, look, the Jets offensive coordinator job is not the most appealing offensive coordinator job out there. I don't think it's the worst OC job necessarily, but the Texans were undoubtedly a better landing spot. Even like the Seahawks, better landing spot. There were better offensive coordinator jobs out there than the Jets. With Tanner Engstrom, obviously, as others have talked about, the red flag with him, if you will, is that he was passed over not only internally by the Lions, they chose to hire former Jets offensive coordinator John Morton instead, but also by Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson brought in what's his name? O'Doyle? Right?
Declan Doyle.
Declan Doyle, who's the brother of the former Iowa guy, Chris Doyle.
He's the son. Yeah, it's his dad.
Son, whatever he is. Yeah, what is he? And he's like 30 years old, this dude, right?
He's 28.
My dude, he's 28.
Yeah.
You're 27 already. I'll be 27 this year. That's ridiculous.
Jimi Hendrix was 27 when he died. Like, it's over for us, man. Like, we can't be Jimi Hendrix. Kurt Cobain was 27.
We are
We
resided.
can't reach those heights, man.
We're resided to being podcasters on the internet. That's our
which is a pretty okay lot in life, but it's not Jimi Hendrix.
It's all right. But yeah, the offensive staff is going to make or break Aaron Glenn's first staff, and I also don't think we're done. I think they will bring in experienced names, whether that's a Todd Haley that's been thrown around. I mentioned Anthony Lynn, who was the offensive coordinator of the Lions in 2021. He makes a ton of sense to me if they want to bring him in as like a running backs coach, assistant head coach. I don't believe they have a running backs coach under contract yet. No, they don't. So it would make a ton of sense to me if they bring him in that kind of a role. He has been.
Knows if it's lateral, Washington, because he's the running back coach with Washington right now, they can block the move if it's lateral.
Does he also have the assistant head coach title?
I don't know. Run game coordinator.
I don't know if I don't think they would consider assistant head coach like a promotion. I don't think the NFL rules would. I think they'd still be able to block that. But if they can somehow sneak him free from Washington, that makes a ton of sense.
They already blocked David Blow, so
they did, and that's what I'm saying, because the Jets were interviewing him as a quarterbacks coach, but he was an assistant quarterbacks coach, which for some reason is not considered a promotion, so they were able to block it. So I don't know if it's the same with Lynn, but regardless, I think they're going to add a couple of experienced guys to their offensive staff. Right now, the most experienced guy is probably Charles London, who he's bounced around. He's been a quarterbacks coach, been a running backs coach, has worked with Geno Smith last year, and he did a pretty good job. It's not like he developed him necessarily, but can't say the same for, he worked with like a washed Matt Ryan in Atlanta, worked with Will Levis in Tennessee. Not a ton on the resume there. But yeah, it's really going to come down to that. I don't have too much hesitation about it's not being the most experienced staff right now because I wasn't expecting it to be. And I also think they will add a couple of names there. But overall, if we're grading it, I'm curious what you would say. Say like a B, I think is a fair coaching staff grade for him. It's not blowing me out of the water, but it's also not, he didn't hire Scott Turner as the offensive coordinator, which that would have been pretty bad. I like the OC hire. I really like the DC hire, and I really like the special teams coordinator hire. Those are the most important positions for me.
Like, if you compare this to Robert Saleh's staff, because Saleh, I thought, had too many first-time guys. It was all San Francisco buddies.
Yeah.
I think this is a much better staff. Even as much as I like Mike LaFleur, I think this is a much better staff.
You could argue that.
I gave it a B+. The grade is hinging, obviously, on Engstrand above all. And I get that it's not a good look. I find the excuses for why Ben Johnson said he didn't take him over kind of flimsy. It was like, I did it out of respect for Dan Campbell. I'm like, okay, yeah, you might get one head coaching job. You as an offensive guy are not going to take your OC to do your buddy a solid in the division.
Right. Yeah, and he didn't even stay with Detroit anyway. So
he didn't end up staying anyway. I guess he thought they'd promote him, and then they didn't. But
yeah.
And Engstrand, it's tough because, look, the last time he really called plays at a high level was for that long stint at San Diego, the college.
Hey, DC Defenders, respect the XFL.
And the DC Defenders, that's basically San Diego level of
wow. No, we respect spring football in this podcast. Don't you dare.
Maybe half of it does. I just am scarred because I got so bought into that. What was that one? The AAF?
Why? You hitched your wagon to the wrong
because I really wanted to like it so badly, and it was not good. So I'm like, the rest of it.
One of all of them. That was the worst one.
It shut down after 5-6 weeks?
Something like that, yeah. I also was watching that, but
anyway, the Salt Lake Stallions. But Engstrand, he's going to determine a lot of this. It's tough to really determine what his offensive principles are because now it's probably going to be Ben Johnson adjacent, but Ben Johnson, to me, this is just how it looks to me. Call me unprepared. I didn't go back and grind 2014 San Diego College offensive film. Sorry, I didn't do that. Like Shanahan, McVay, even like what Peterson was doing in Philly, seem to have a lot more structure and a lot of maybe it's just the way they market themselves with a lot of these catchy concepts. I see more of a structure there. I don't know if I necessarily see that with Ben Johnson yet. I think it's just he's going to try and take whatever ideas he learned from Ben Johnson and replicate it with the Jets. And if he does that, great. If Aaron Rodgers especially is back and he's willing to learn with that, then I think that could be really good. Because the last time Aaron Rodgers really had to go outside of his comfort zone schematically, offensively, was Matt LaFleur.
Mike, apparently your mic is cutting out. I hear you fine. We have a couple people in chat saying you're cutting out. Chat, help me out. Can you hear me? Or is it just Mike's phone? Or is it if it's our entire broadcast, I don't know what to do.
Oh, dear. Is it my mic? Is it good now?
So you sound fine to me. That's the concerning part.
All right, I'll just unplug it and go.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Is this better?
I mean, I told you sound fine to me. I have no idea. Chad, if I sound weird at all, let me know, please, because it sounds normal to me. I'm going to keep talking, assuming that I sound fine.
But anyway, what I was saying earlier, though, is if Aaron Rodgers is willing to learn from Tanner Engstrand,
It's both of us.
That's not both great. Of us. Okay.
Interesting. All is good. Brian's saying it's all good for him. All right, hold on, Mike, stay here. We're gonna workshop this live on the air. Mike, stay here. I'm gonna pop out and pop back in.
All right. So you get to see live tech support here on the Jet Press podcast. All because I wanted to make a point about Aaron Rodgers. And this is what I get for that.
Okay, I'm back. Chat, let me know how I sound. We've been doing this show for over 2 years now. Mike's gonna pop out and see if it works for him. We've been doing this show for over 2 years. Have not run into this issue yet. I don't know if it's restream. I don't know what's going on there. If I sound good or bad, let me know. Chat, help us out. No dice. Brian says no dice. Oh no. We might have to restart the stream then. Josh Kerr is saying Josh says he left the stream and came back and sounds good now. James,
all right.
Brian's saying it's good. All right. I think we're good. Brian Sternbeck confirmed to me that it's good for you. It's good for others. I think we're good.
All right. So my entire point of all of that was
good now. All right, we're good.
If Aaron Rodgers is willing to listen to Tanner Engstrand, because the last time he had to do that was with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. He won 2 MVPs. It could work. Let's just move on to the next topic.
Sure. That's because I had a point I wanted to talk about. Actually, this is a good segue. Well, we could talk about the Rodgers conversation. Let's talk the front office stuff first, and then because I know people want to talk about the Rodgers situation, but we'll get to that momentarily. Let's talk about the
apologies for the tech problems, guys.
Hey man, it happens. We're doing it live.
Yep. So the Jets did finally make some front office moves. They cleaned out the old guard, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for the quote-unquote old guard. The Joe Douglas guys and all his disciples.
The Rex Hogans.
The Rex Hogans, who I think was the Diana Rossini leaker.
Maybe. That was the speculation.
It was either Rex Hogan or Joe Douglas himself.
Well, I think it was very clearly at least partially Douglas and at least partially Saleh. Like they were talking once they got fired. I don't know if
I haven't heard anything about the Jets since they got fired. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, they were. I don't know, man. They were talking after they got fired immediately. I mean, in that story, it was like Joe Douglas was fishing and doing this stuff. It's like, who the hell else is going to know that except Joe Douglas?
Manish Mehta.
Honestly,
his uniquely abrasive style of reporting.
Maybe Manish Mehta is just lurking around the Jets facilities and he's just stalking everybody. And that's the league.
Posted Joe Douglas's phone number.
Yes, Yes, I do.
As long as we're not Manish Mehta, we're doing an okay job. But they overhauled the front office. I want to get your thoughts on this, Justin, because I thought keeping Phil Savage was kind of an interesting move. He's a holdover from the last regime. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be the most important set. I think probably he's going to be third on the list, if anything. Like at the most, he's going to be third. Because as we mentioned before, Aaron Glenn's going to be in charge of all of this. This is Aaron Glenn's operation. So if it's not him 1, Muji 2, it's like a 1-1-A thing, then maybe Phil Savage. How do you think the whole dynamic is going to work with this thing?
Real quick, going to answer this question first because I don't want to move on before we answer it. Josh Kerr said, non-Jets question, if a position coach is hired as a coordinator, do they have to make their own playbook or do they just take what they've been using? I always wondered. They make their own playbook. Like they obviously will take elements from the playbooks that they've used in the past, but they're not going to just copy the playbook that they've been using. In fact, every year, every team kind of makes a new playbook from start or from scratch, but they add a lot of elements to it. Like the Jets playbook, or I'll even use the Chiefs where they've had Andy Reid there for a long time. The opposite playbook that the Chiefs had in 2023 is not the same playbook as they have in 2024. It is always a constantly evolving playbook. Obviously, there's different. There's various different elements that stay the same, but it's changed throughout. Anyway,
I can remember though. Like again, this is not a legal opinion. I am not a lawyer, but I do remember that Wake Forest had a scandal where the announcer was like leaking the plays to the other team a while ago. And there was a whole argument, like, is a playbook considered intellectual property of somebody?
That is a good
Because
question.
that one guy's intellectual property. So yeah, you have to make your own.
For
Otherwise,
sure.
now again, you make your own based on probably similar concepts, probably similar terminology from another guy. But I think the combination of it is all specific to one person.
For sure. And yeah, now back to the front office talk. Yeah, I like keeping Phil Savage around. It's my understanding that he was well liked in the Jets building, and look, that man was going down with the ship. He was still making moves up until January. He was still doing stuff. Like they signed a CFL guy to a futures contract. They were bringing in CFL guys for tryouts. I'm like, this dude doesn't like Phil Savage didn't even know he was gonna have a job in a week, and he's still doing this. So I think he endeared himself well to the organization and was well liked in the building. I don't want to say he did a good job or bad job because it's hard to judge, but clearly they liked him enough that they're going to keep him around in a consultant role. I don't think it'll be a high profile position, but he is an experienced front office guy, has previous GM experience, more not even just as the interim GM. He's been a GM in the NFL before that. So it makes sense to keep him around. The other front office moves that the Jets made, they fired their co-director of player personnel, Greg Nejme, I believe is maybe how you pronounce it. He is no longer with the organization, so I didn't bother to look up how it's pronounced. And then senior director of football administration, David Sochi, not spelled like the Russian city. I don't know, man.
How do you spell Soci?
Socie? Soci? I don't know, man. They're both gone.
Saucy? I don't know.
Greg Saucy.
David Saucy. Hello, Mr. David Saucy. Nice to meet you.
David Saucy, yeah. Well, as for Greg N, he's been there with the Jets, I think, for like 18 years or something like that. 16 years. He's been there a very, very, very long time. Sochi David, right? That's his first name, David. He'd only been there like 7 or 8 years. I am very much in favor of Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn coming in, kind of ridding the current front office of a lot of the holdovers that have been there for a very long time. It's something that their predecessors didn't really do. I mean, when Joe Douglas came in, they brought in a couple of guys. Like he brought in, I believe Rex Hogan was a Joe Douglas guy. And I think, I forget his first name, Carr was his last name. I believe he was a Joe Douglas guy as well, kind of the director.
Just cleaned out, I think, after 23, that guy.
Yeah, yes. But it wasn't really a thing that the last couple of regimes have done to maybe this extent. There's been guys in that building who have been there for decades at this point. I don't think they're going to be able to completely clean house. Like, I don't think Jaime Elhai is going anywhere. That is Woody Johnson's buddy. If Jaime Elhai is gone, Woody Johnson probably sold the Jets organization because that is his right-hand man. But it does sound like they're not done completely with these front office overhauls. I think after the draft, you're going to see a lot more too, because a lot of times when you have a new regime come in, since the draft is at a weird time where, the entire scouting department has been doing their work on this draft, you can't really bring in a new regime and just get rid of the scouting department before the draft happens. So I think post-draft, we'll probably see more of an overhaul of the entire scouting department. For now, these are the moves they're making. I like that they're doing this. It's something that the previous regimes haven't done to this extent. Good. Get the old guard out of there. Get the fresh blood in. That's what the Jets should be trying to do.
The concern I have, though, is I very much am big on hiring some sort of football ops guy next to Darren Muji, even if this is going to be Aaron Glenn's show. Because as Muji looks like a pretty good candidate, but he's very young. He's not even 40 years old yet. He's only been in one organization, Denver. So I know he's been around a bunch of different GMs, John Elway, George Payton, Sean Payton too. I get that but I want somebody just to say, hey, Darren, I'd probably do this. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. We mentioned before a couple guys, like they interviewed a guy like a Chris Spielman, who I think right now is basically just like a gopher between ownership in Detroit and the front office. I think he'd be a good mind having there. Or his brother, Rick Spielman. He seems like a guy. Thomas Dimitroff, who we'll get into a little bit later.
Hey, Thomas Dimitroff.
Perfect example of a guy like that. We always talked about Aaron Glenn getting an experienced guy. Not that you need a guy who was like Mike McCarthy to tell him here's how to do things, but just somebody to be a sounding board. Because as good as you could be as picking players, as good as Muji probably is at that, GM just from an administrative and from a pressure point of view is so different. Bill Parcells I know you don't want to hear quoting Bill Parcells. It sounds hacky for a Jets fan to do that, but when asked about Aaron Glenn taking the job, he said, one thing that I want you to be a scout before you take that coaching job is there's going to be 5 or 6 different things a day that you're not going to want to have happen that have happened. And you got to learn how to deal with it from every angle. Paraphrasing Parcells there. GM's the same sort of way. And as much as Aaron Glenn's in front of this, I would feel a lot better about just the offseason and the general direction if you had one other guy in there next to Darren Muji. Because Darren Muji, if you wanted like almost make like a player comparison of it, he's kind of a raw toolsy guy. We think he's going to be good. Everything he's done the last couple of years says he's going to be good, but we really don't know. And we really don't know about Joe Douglas either. I get that. But Muji does seem like a little bit more of a gamble than Douglas did. And because of that, I think I want somebody more than Phil Savage, who almost ruined the Browns. I want somebody more than him helping Darren Muji out for some big decisions that are going to impact this franchise for years.
Yeah, and if you want to follow the Lions model, that's exactly what they did. When Brad Holmes came in there, they brought in John Dorsey. John Dorsey is the senior personnel executive. He is still in Detroit to this day helping out Brad Holmes. That was a massive, massive, massive hire for them. Brad Holmes was a qualified candidate who looked like a good GM candidate on paper, but it always helps to have an experienced guy like that around. Now, I would love for the Jets to bring in a Thomas Dimitroff and to hire him as whatever role it would be, assistant general manager or senior personnel executive, whatever I want to call him. I would love that. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're more likely going to be just confined to, okay, we got Phil Savage as a consultant, and then maybe a Mike Tannenbaum. Like I don't know if that's something Jets fans would particularly be excited about, but I could see Tannenbaum kind of.
They were excited about Rex. They'll be excited about Tannenbaum.
I don't think Jets fans have the same nostalgia kick for Mike Tannenbaum. I don't think he's held in the same regard. But I think that I don't want to use the word weasel his way in, but it kind of would be that where, he helped run the operation to find a new general manager and find a new head coach. He got to work with Woody Johnson again. Maybe Woody got reminiscent about old times. And he's then, Tanny's like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we just ran it back? I can come on in this, smaller role. I'm an experienced guy. I can help out your young first-time general
manager. The Jets. That's what got Rex an interview. I know how to win here.
Exactly. That's what he'd say. And I could totally see Woody being like, you know what? You're right. Let's bring him on. I think that's probably more likely to happen than the Jets hiring a Thomas Dimitroff. But I would love it. I would be very much supportive of them bringing in someone like a Dimitroff. I think we're going to be fine with Savage because he's been there and now he's a consultant and whatever. He has the experience. At least he's an experienced GM. I don't hate it. And then Tannenbaum, again, he's been a GM at the NFL level before. He also helped run the Dolphins, not as a GM, but whatever his role was, vice president of whatever he was. I think it would make sense, and I wouldn't hate it at all. But yeah, either way, overall in the front office, good decision. I'm glad that they're making these moves, and yeah, man, we'll see where they go from here. And as Brian in chat points out, they did make a hire today. Rob Payton, who is the nephew of George Payton, was actually in Denver before George Payton was hired. He was serving as a scout. Most recently was
hired the Nepo baby before the.
I know. Weird situation. He's not. They hired the Nepo baby before the uncle, the Nepo. I don't know what you want to call it.
What's the opposite of Nepo baby?
Nepo parent. Nepo.
Well, no, because nepotism is for the kid.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Look it up, figure it out. But he was a national scout for the Broncos. Previously served as a scouting coordinator for them. Was also a safety at UCLA. And as I pointed out on Twitter, I don't know if they actually crossed paths, but he did attend the University of San Diego at the same time as Tanner Engstrand, the new offensive coordinator for the Jets. So maybe there's a connection there. Now, I couldn't find any evidence that he actually played football at USD at San Diego, but he did play football at UCLA before he transferred to San Diego. And I know that Tanner Engstrand was on the staff at that time as well. I don't know if they knew each other. I don't know if they were friends. I have no idea. All I know is that they were at San Diego at the same time. So there's possibly a connection there. Peyton, also decently young for, the role that he's in. He's been with the Broncos for 7 years, something like that. Started out as an intern only in 2017. First became an actual scout in 2019. So he doesn't have like this huge record of, being a scout for 20 years, but they're going young. I don't hate it. Again, like you said, Mike, that's another reason that we probably want another experienced guy in the building to help them out.
Let's talk Thomas Dimitroff, because he was at Radio Row for Super Bowl, the whole media festivities before the Super Bowl. Interview with the Jets for their GM job, former GM of the Atlanta Falcons, obviously, for 12 years. Got to a Super Bowl, would have won it if not for satanic black magic level bad luck hitting him at the wrong time.
Yeah.
I mean, he might still be there if that doesn't happen. He might be.
Yeah, possibly.
So He's interviewed. He's asked about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers because he interviews for it. And he gives a really, I don't want to say conflicting answer, but an answer that I think Justin would agree with, but it might be tough for the Jets to get around from an organizational point of view, where he did admit that he thinks Aaron Rodgers can still make plays and probably for 2025 is going to be the Jets' best option at quarterback, but he also believes that the best option moving forward right now is for the Jets to move on from Aaron Rodgers. It sounds like he, like Justin, is very concerned about the money in the next 2 years. And I think if the money was different, we're having a totally different conversation, and the money might be kind of what's holding everybody back. The problem is, and I've learned not to trust players and to be executives. I've learned that because how many times do players, it happens more in the NBA than the NFL, but players try to engineer trades and moves to certain places and it doesn't work out, or players vouch for guys to be signed and it doesn't work out. Players vouch for coaches to be fired. Vic Fangio in Miami. Happens all the time. A lot of times they get burned on it.
Kevin Durant in Brooklyn.
Sorry
Sorry to do that to you.
And well, I will say, though, Kenny Atkinson was struggling, and Steve Nash, I don't know how much he was coaching, but if Durant's foot was a size smaller, he probably beat the Bucks in that. Yeah,
maybe.
He was an okay coach. People try to make him look like he was an okay coach.
Of the trio of Durant, Harden, and Kyrie, Durant did the least damage.
Durant is by far the least objectionable, not even close.
Correct. I agree.
But going back to, because of that, though, Quincy Williams and Jermaine Johnson were both asked questions about the team, Aaron Rodgers, all that. Both of them firmly advocating for Aaron Rodgers to come back. And that really, it makes it harder for me because, like Justin, I agree that I do not want to take that huge cap hit in the future. I get that. And just taking it on the chin this year, restarting in 2026, I get why that's appealing, or 2025. I get why that's appealing. The problem is when you're Aaron Glenn, get your seatbelts on. We're the New York Jets. We're built for this. Like that's an energy shifting move. Things are going completely different this time around. I don't care who we're playing. We're going to try and beat. Like, they didn't have this sort of alpha energy with Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh projected that. He looked like a tough guy. That team never felt like that. They never felt like this killer instinct team, except for half of 2023 or 2022.
That was only half the team. The defense felt that way.
The defense, yeah.
Yeah, the offense.
And then the offense couldn't do anything. So nobody feared him.
Yeah.
So one of your first steps in changing the culture is, hey, look, I know you guys want him back, Mr. Players Coach. I know you guys want Aaron Rodgers back, but, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of him. We don't like a quarterback this year, so if we don't get Justin Fields, we're probably going to get Kirk Cousins or Marcus Mariota. We're going to suck this year. I know it'll be tough, but if you hang with me, then next year we could possibly improve to be an 8 or 9 win team. That message is probably not going to go down as well in the locker room as we're running it back with Aaron Rodgers again. And I know players don't care about the finances because a lot of these guys are not going to be with the Jets to the point where those finances are going to hurt them. So I get all that. It made me more conflicted. I'll wake up every single day and I'll go back and forth on it. You get me on the wrong day. It's, well, I believe they should get rid of Aaron Rodgers. Well, I believe they should keep Aaron Rodgers. It's that 50-50 a proposition for me. It's a very unique situation. Hearing comments like this from Dimitrov and the response from Quinn Williams, Jermaine Johnson, I still can't totally put it to bed about keeping Aaron Rodgers. I really can't. Brian Glick says no Jameis Winston. That might be the best guy you can get if there's no Aaron Rodgers.
I'd have fun.
He might be the best quarterback available.
I'd have fun watching Jameis. They wouldn't be good, but he's a fun quarterback to watch. Brian also said, by the way, go Knicks. And I got to say, I might after those wins over Houston and Toronto, I might be naming my future kid Brunson. Just gonna throw that out there.
It'd be the actively tanking Raptors who were never healthy.
Hey man, great game. Second half of back-to-back on the road, never easy. You should ask the Rockets who just lost to the Nets last night in that same situation.
That's not by the way, Nets fans are really pissed about that.
I'm sure they are. They're trying to lose.
God, I hate that fan base so much. Loser energy emanates from them. People complain about like, oh, same old Jets, they're a negative fan base. There are discussions every day on Nets Twitter I see. Are they winning too much? Give me a break.
Well, they're trying to tank. That's anyway. We'll get off topic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's tank lottery ping pong ball. The Hawks were 10th last year. They got the number 1 pick. Who cares?
I know. But on the
Ryan
Rodgers,
with another funny comment too before we get going, Justin. With Winston at quarterback, let's punt on 3rd down every drive.
Why not? He'll just throw arm punts. It'll be fine. I'd rather look.
He's not that bad. Yeah.
He'll give Thomas Morstead a well-deserved break and just be hucking it 40 yards down the field, and it'll be intercepted, and it'll be fine.
Jameis will be the next 4,000-yard Jets passer.
Absolutely. He'd also throw 25 picks, but probably like 25 touchdowns as well.
Right? That's a little harsh, but
he threw 30 with the Bucks, right? Wasn't it 30?
Bruce Arians, though. That's not Tanner Engstrand.
Still. I'm glad you brought up Engstrand, though, because I also think that's something, and I wanted to talk about this earlier. I've talked about the Aaron Rodgers situation a lot, and those who watch the show and those who follow Jeff Press on Twitter, whatever, they know my opinion. They know that I don't want Aaron Rodgers back. Now, I want to make this clear. I don't think you're crazy, you or anybody who ever wants Rodgers back. I don't think you're crazy for wanting that. I think there are valid reasons to want Aaron Rodgers back in 2025. And if the Jets decide to go that route, which I think is possible still, I don't think it's likely, but I think it's still possible, I will have to get behind it. And I understand the reasoning behind it as well. It's a very complex decision. And I've already talked about the finances. I don't need to go into that again, but the Spark Notes version of it is that if they keep him for another year, that really, really hurts their cap in 2026 and most likely 2027. They could rework his contract, and I bet if they do bring him back, they will do that. I just can't know how much of a pay cut he's willing to take, so I can't really speak on that. It would have to be substantial. But even ignoring the finances for a second, I think there are still a lot of reasons to not want Aaron Rodgers back in 2025. And I'll start with the offensive scheme. I'll start with Tanner Engstrand, which is what I was going to talk about before a couple of segments ago. I don't know the offense that Tanner Engstrand is going to run, but I imagine it will be very similar. It'll borrow a lot of similar concepts to what they did in Detroit. I think Aaron Rodgers is an awful fit for what they ran in Detroit. A couple of numbers that I'll throw out there.
I mean, the fact they were able to get that efficient of an offense, I mean, Goff is not a mobile quarterback. Now Rodgers gives you a mobility element that Goff doesn't have.
So for starters, they ran league-high play action rate. They love play action. They used a ton of play action. They used a ton of motion. I think they were also maybe top 2 or 3 in motion rate in the NFL as well. They love pre-snap motion. They love play action. Aaron Rodgers hates both of those things. He very much refuses to at all costs use them unless he's forced to. The Jets have one of the lowest rates. And remember what happened there in 2019 when Matt LaFleur, that's the only first-time play caller that Aaron Rodgers ever had to work with. I don't want to say revolted, but they had a lot of issues, Rodgers and LaFleur, that first year back in 2019. And LaFleur had to adapt his scheme to kind of fit Rodgers a little bit more and had to bend his will and to kind of not bend over backwards for Rodgers, but he really had to relent a lot to Aaron Rodgers. The Lions, a lot of play action, a lot of pre-snap motion. I imagine Tanner Engstrand is going to try and implement some of those similar principles with the Jets as well. Second thing that I also think is very, very, and this was pointed out by Rich Cimini, so hat tip to him for this. Detroit also ran a league high 39% of their plays from under center last year. Jets had just 15%, one of the lowest rates in the NFL. That's because Aaron Rodgers did not want to be working under center. Part of that was because of the Achilles injury that he was coming back from. Part of it was because of other leg injuries. He did not want to be working under center. He wanted to work in the shotgun. Gives you more time to read the defense when you're working the shotgun, and it's also easier on your legs. So again, if that's the offense that you're trying to implement in New York, I see it conflicting directly with what Aaron Rodgers wants. And that brings me to the point of either Aaron Rodgers is now going to be playing in a system that he does not feel comfortable playing in, or Tanner Engstrand is going to have to wholesale, significantly change his scheme to fit a 41-year-old, soon to be 42-year-old quarterback by the end of the season that is probably going to be here for 1 year. And then he's going to have to implement a completely different system, assuming they have a different quarterback in 2026. I don't think that that's smart. And I also think, and back to what Dimitroff said, because Dimitroff didn't just say that it was best for the Jets to move on. He thought it was also best for Aaron Rodgers to move on. And I got to say, everything that Thomas Dimitroff said is kind of what I've been saying for weeks. I wholeheartedly agree with everything he said. I think it's best for both sides to move on. I think Aaron Rodgers can still play. I think he's a limited quarterback at this stage of his career who is still good, and we still see flashes of the old Aaron Rodgers. But I don't trust him to stay healthy for a full 17-game season and not just play every game, because he played every game this year. He was healthy 6 of those games, maybe, where it looked like, okay, he's actually playing at 100%. He was banged up throughout the year. And that's despite the fact that the Jets, for a lot of that year, had a pretty good offensive line. Aaron Rodgers had one of the better clean pocket percentages in the NFL. His efficiency throwing in a clean pocket was terrible. He was really bad when he was given time. So that's another part of it as well. But yeah, I think the conversation with Rodgers, it's more than just finances to me. It's the scheme fit. It's how much influence is he going to have over the coaching staff. I don't want him having that kind of influence over a first-time offensive coordinator when you're trying to implement an entire new culture, an entire new system, an entire new coaching staff. I don't think it's smart to keep him around for that.
How do you implement a new culture with a culture that was all these guys that are on the team now have been around a losing culture, all of them for their entire careers. So how do you reconcile that with, well, we're going to lose more because we just don't outside of trading for Matthew Stafford, which is not going to happen. There's no viable quarterback. Darnold isn't going to happen. There's no viable quarterback out there where you could say the Jets are either going to be, it's either a lateral move, upgrade, or ever so slightly downgrade, but you could still be competitive. That's not really out there for them. So it's going to be a huge downgrade. That's tough for culture building. And part of why Aaron Glenn was hired was the culture building stuff. Because I think he's a good defensive mind. I don't think he's a great one. That's why you get him. I think that conflicts with hiring Aaron Glenn specifically. If you hired Liam Cohen and you want him to get his quarterback and his scheme, and maybe I could buy that a little bit. But when so much of Glenn was culture, change the temperature, change the locker room, and then you do this, that goes against it. I know the money implications are there, but I would argue probably setting a good culture might be bigger than impacting the cap in a couple of years, because if you have a good winning culture, you can work around stuff like that.
And I think that's a very valid point. And that's why I don't think it's a black and white situation where I'm not saying people are crazy for wanting Aaron Rodgers back. I think there are very valid reasons to want him back. And what you just said makes a ton of sense to me. The lack of viable alternatives is the best argument to want Aaron Rodgers back. As I've said from the start, Aaron Rodgers is the Jets' best chance to compete in 2025. If the Jets are trying to contend, trying to legitimately compete in 2025, which I don't know if they are yet. I don't know what their plan is. But if they are, keeping Aaron Rodgers is probably their best call. I don't think they're going to find another option that's better. Maybe you could swing me on, if Derek Carr were to sneak free from New Orleans, you could swing me on him being better than Aaron Rodgers at this stage. I think they're the same caliber of
probably keep Devontae too if that happens.
Probably keep Devontae. I think Carr is the only one where it's like, all right, if you're trying to contend and he actually shakes free.
But even then, there's so many hoops the Saints got to jump through that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not. I don't know if he's going to shake free. But I agree that the lack of viable alternatives is the best argument there. My argument against that has always been, well, twofold, right? So on the competing aspect of it, I don't think the Jets are a playoff team in 2025 with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. I don't think, regardless of who the Jets have as their quarterback in 2025, of the realistic options, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. They could be. This isn't me saying 100% they're not going to be a playoff team. It is. Who thought the Broncos were going to make the playoffs this year, right? Nobody. There's a lot that can change in the NFL.
There's grinding out wins with a bad roster. You never know.
Find a way to do it. There's still so much that can happen. But I think I would put the odds at less than 50%. I'd probably put them at 30% that they make the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. And that's not me saying that. I think if Aaron Rodgers was healthy and played a full 17-game season and they made a couple of good moves in the offseason, they filled some roster roles, yeah, I think they're probably a 10-win team, maybe 11 wins, an absolute ceiling. I don't think Aaron Rodgers stays healthy for 17 games, and I don't think he plays at the level they need him to for a full 17-game season. And I also don't think that the roster is good enough to carry whatever we're going to get from Rodgers next year. So that's number one on that. And I don't think that it is worth it, as I've said, for an off chance that maybe contending in 2025 to then, I don't want to say completely ruin, but to really hinder your cap situation, your financial flexibility in 2026 and likely 2027. That's been my argument from the start. And then number two on this, as far as the culture building stuff, 100% very important. And it is probably a tough sell to say, hey, look, we have a Hall of Fame quarterback here and we are going to move on.
And from Devontae too.
And Devontae as well. And we don't know who we're getting back. I think that's a very valid point. I'll say two things on that. One, we don't know what the quarterback market's going to look like right now. It's February 5th. I don't know who's actually going to be available a month from now. I don't. I think we'll have a clearer picture then. If the best quarterback available in a month from now is Jacoby Brissett, maybe my opinion has changed on this, right? I don't know. But if a Carr is out there, if a Cousins is out there, if Fields is out there, because I don't know if Justin Fields, he might stay in Pittsburgh at this point. Russell Wilson, one of Fields or Wilson will be available. I think Russell Wilson, if he's gone, is probably going to Vegas. But I can't say right now. I don't exactly know what the quarterbacks market is going to look like. So that's number one. And then number two on that, Aaron Glenn stepping into a situation where he knows, I don't want to say it's an untenable situation because it's not, but it is a lot of work. There is a lot of work to change this culture of losing, of dysfunction, of malpractice.
You don't want to start with more losing, right?
That has infiltrated this organization for the better part of the last 2 decades almost, right? He knows that. And it was the same thing when he got to Detroit. It was the exact same situation. 2021, he got there with Dan Campbell. They went 3-13 or 3-13-1. They won 3 games his first year. Change does not happen overnight. And I think the players know that. I think Aaron Glenn knows that. I don't think Aaron Glenn is stepping into the Jets this year and says, we have to make the playoffs or else no one's going to buy in. I don't think
not
that's
even
the
the
mindset.
playoffs. Just like, hey, let's try 8-9 games. We can't try to win 8-9 games.
Sure. I think they absolutely could win 8 or 9 games, regardless of who their quarterback is next year. As long as it's somebody who's a fringe starting caliber quarterback, they could win 8 or 9 games. They absolutely could. If Aaron Glenn is who he says he is, and we think, the rosters has enough talent as we think. Because look, as much as the Jets underachieved last year, and as much as I think a lot of the sentiment was, oh, maybe we overestimated the roster, I think part of it was guys just completely underperforming. Sauce Gardner is better than what we saw last year. Breece Hall is better than what we saw last year. Garrett Wilson was still great. I think he's still better than what we saw last year. There's a lot of talent
Greg
in that
Zuerlein,
roster. That I think
Jeff Ulbrich, those guys aren't going to be here.
Right. To the point where, again, and I know this is kind of not counterintuitive, but it's almost contradicting what I had said, where I'm like, hey, I don't know if the team is good enough to make the playoffs next year. And I still don't think, I think if they get rid of Aaron Rodgers, I still don't think they have a good chance to make the playoffs, but I think they can. I think they can do it. And I think that's the more important aspect to me is you don't need to be able to compete in year one to implement a culture change. You need to build sustained winning, because then what happens, Mike? What if you bring back Aaron Rodgers in 2025? You bring back Devontae Adams. Hey, you win 9 games. Cool. You just missed the playoffs. You fall just short, but you were competitive. Aaron Rodgers stayed mostly healthy. That's fine. Okay, cool. Now your cap situation is destroyed in 2026 and 2027, and you start losing those years. What happens then? The way to change a culture is to build sustained success and to win over time. It's not necessarily in year one. And I think moving on from Aaron Rodgers gives them the best chance to implement that culture change and to win over time.
I just don't know. The problem with this job specifically is Woody. I don't know if he'll give him that time.
Woody Johnson has given, to his
let me rephrase. Give him that time without doing his normal Woody, because Woody always lets you start off doing your thing, and then if you don't win, then he meddles.
Sure.
The fear that I have is that Aaron Glenn does get rid of Rodgers, does this whole clean out, and then the wins don't come, and Woody starts going, well, Aaron Glenn's not working. I got to call the Bobs again. And I wouldn't have to worry about that with Baltimore, Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo. I wouldn't have to worry about that stuff. But with the Jets, you do.
And that's just something they got to live with. I can't tell you, sit here and say that's not going to happen. I want to believe that Woody Johnson is willing to give Aaron Glenn, because I'll say this, the difference between Aaron Glenn and previous Jets coaching hires that have come in recent years is that it feels like, I don't know if it's just a feeling thing or whatever, but it feels like he's a New York Jet, right? I think Woody Johnson is bringing in Aaron Glenn, and he's not like, this is an outsider and I don't know if he's going to be able to do the job right. I think he's bringing in Aaron Glenn, and he's like, this guy's part of the family. This guy gets New York. He gets the Jets. And I don't think he's hearing that from himself. He's hearing that from others. He's hearing that from Bill Parcells, from Al Groh, from all these former Jets players who are speaking up and saying Aaron Glenn is the guy. He's hearing that from Victor Green. He's hearing that from Chad Cascaden, from all these legends.
Chad Cascaden and legend in the same sentence.
From all these former Jets players who have crossed paths with Aaron Glenn, who are now, this has been written about. I believe Zach Rosenblatt has said this. There's a lot of former Jets players who've been checked out of the organization for years, who have not had anything to do with the team, who have not wanted to, visit the facilities, who don't even watch the games, who are now tuned in. And the Jets are must-watch TV because Aaron Glenn's there. And I think Woody Johnson knows that. He has that public support. Aaron Glenn has so much support from people that have been in the organization and been around the organization for a very long time. And I'd like to hope that would give him a little bit more patience to not completely step in and overthrow his power within 2 years if things aren't turned around. But again, if they're following the Detroit the Detroit, blueprint, I don't think it'll be 3-4 years before the Jets are a contending team. I don't think it needs to be that at all. I think by 2026, they could absolutely be a 9-win team if they move on from here. Obviously, if they don't move on from Rodgers, they could be a 9-win team this year. I just don't know what 2026 and 2027 holds. But yeah, I don't think you can let the fear of Woody Johnson dictate what your decision is with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that should be in the forefront of your mind.
Let's talk about the one game going on this week. Super Bowl 59. Maybe not Jets related, but it's pertinent to our jobs, I would say.
I want to hear everyone else's Super Bowl predictions in chat, by the way. Let us know. We're going to do a little, 10, 15-minute conversation about the Super Bowl. Let's talk football. We don't get to talk non-Jets football all the time on this show, and it's always fun when we do. So let's hear what others got to say.
I want to start first by apologizing.
Oh, okay.
Because I've said a lot of things about the Tom Brady, Patriots era. If I sounded like the people who were like, the Chiefs are getting rigged because of if I ever sounded like that, I am sorry, I take it all back. Because these dolts, these cretins that I have seen on social media who just have gray matter drooling out of their ears in this fine slurry, all I see is the Chiefs are getting rigged call to the point where in the lead up to the AFC Championship, which should have been Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, this great game, the Super Bowl, Roger Goodell at the media is asked about, are the refs favoring the Chiefs? The fact this is a talking point drives me insane. It's driving me nuts. Actually, before when this matchup was announced, I was actually starting to root for the Eagles because I like seeing everybody else, but I want Lamar Jackson to get a ring. I want some other guys to get a ring, I don't want Mahomes to get 9. As much as I like Patrick Mahomes, I don't want him to get 9 rings. That's not as fun. But then I see all these people, the refs and this and Taylor Swift, and it's entertainment, and I'm not watching the Super Bowl. Every single one of those, I'm like, you know what? If those guys will be miserable, Chiefs Kingdom all the way. Because I can't take any more of this, the rigging the games stuff. And I think you've seen this take too, Justin. That's really driving me crazy. The Patriots dynasty wasn't this bad. Are you on crack? The Patriots dynasty was 5 times worse than 28-3. The Chiefs haven't done anything as bad as 28-3 or the tuck rule or that Julian Edelman catch where the ball hovered in midair for 3 seconds. Nothing. Or winning a Super Bowl 13-3. They haven't done anything that bad yet.
Aaron Hernandez killed a guy.
Whoa, the Chiefs bring in domestic violence. Aaron Hernandez
murdered someone. Spygate, Deflategate.
How many gates? The Chiefs don't have any gates. Patriots have 2.
They have Taylor Swift. That's what they got.
That's another thing I got to take aim at, Justin. The people that are I hate Taylor Swift's on the game. How long is she on the TV in a game? 10 seconds? 15 seconds?
Right. Do people not expect
Why
the
are
NFL
they marketing her?
to
You're telling me you don't understand why the NFL isn't marketing probably the biggest pop star in the world, dating a top 5 most noticeable player in the league in terms of recognition with no guarantee of how long it'll last? You're telling me you don't know why they're marketing that? I can't help you people. It's driving me crazy.
Did you see someone ask Travis Kelce at the media session? They asked him, what do you love more, Taylor Swift or phantom 15-yard roughing the passer penalties? What are we doing?
It's ruining the mystique of the game.
How did that guy get to go to that position? How did he end up in that position to ask that question? How?
Because it's the Super Bowl, so they don't. It's really easy to go to Super Bowl media day because it's people, it's entertainment people, it's culture. It's not just sports writers, so you can be anybody and get in there. Late night shows ask people questions and stuff.
I echo a lot of your frustrations. Before we go into and analyzing the game, right? We'll share our personal opinions on these teams. I don't hate the Chiefs. I got nothing against them. In fact, that I will be candid. I'm rooting for the Chiefs on.
What was the moment where it flipped? Was it Taylor Swift?
I think Taylor Swift had a big part to do with it.
Because people love the Chiefs up until,
Yeah, Taylor Swift's existence breaks a lot of people's brains, and they just hate seeing her on their TV screens, apparently. So I think that was part of it.
Because they listen to the music. I don't.
We were talking about this. This conversation was happening on our work Slack channel the other day, and I agree with a lot of the sentiments that are thrown out there. Where this stuff's inevitable with any dynasty in sports. People are going to hate teams that are succeeding all the time. And when you turn on your TV screen, if all you're seeing is Chiefs, and all you're hearing is Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, even if it's not their fault,
There's
like
a reason
Travis
for
Kelce
that.
and Taylor Swift they're not asking to be at the center of everything, right? That's how media works. Like they're going to cover the stuff that people want to see. And a lot of people want to see Taylor Swift. A lot of people want to see Travis Kelce. So they're going to get covered, right? But if you're a fan who doesn't care about that stuff, you're going to grow resentful of that. And I get that. That's only natural. To me, I don't care. And I will say this. I think the Chiefs are a more likable team than the Eagles. I don't like the Eagles. I don't know if this is a hot take. I know you're from the Philly area, Mike. I don't like the Eagles fan base. Philly fans piss me the fuck off.
I'm with you on that only because they have this reputation as like, well, passionate. Yeah, but like, oh, we're a really tough guy. You can't mess around here. I think they play into that too much and they do like weird stuff on purpose because it's like, oh, I'm an Eagles fan. I got to be tough. I feel like they're doing it on purpose. It's why I hate clowns. I feel like they do shit like that on purpose.
Did you just call Eagles fans clowns?
To a degree, yes.
I honestly, I think it's partially based in because I don't hate most fan bases. I don't hate most fan bases. I don't hate most teams. I honestly like most things. Like I feel like I'm a likable.
Sports is supposed to be stuff you like, man. It's entertainment. It's escapism.
But if there's one fan base that I despise, I know I've said like the Raiders, I've said like other football teams fan base I don't like. There's one fan base in all sports that I hate. It is Philadelphia 76ers fans. They can go fuck themselves. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think it amplified with the Knicks Sixers series last year, but boy, do I hate Sixers fans. And because of that, I think it's kind of bled into me hating Eagles fans. I don't hate them, but I'm just like you said, it's the fake tough guy shit. I don't like it. I also don't
they do actual like stuff that you would never do in public, but it's like, I'm an Eagles, I'm passionate. No, you're not. You're being a dick.
I'm gonna go eat this. Didn't they eat horse shit or something like that? Right?
I think that was just like a guy. I think that was just a guy trying to be like do outrageous stuff for attention.
By they, I mean
one crazy college kid. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I also don't like the team. Like Nick Sirianni. Not a fan of Nick Sirianni. Comes across as a bit of a douche to me.
I only defend him because, again, with Philly fans, he has this reputation as this dummy. He's been a coach for 4 years. He made the playoffs 4 years. Twice he's in the Super Bowl. He's doing something. He's doing something good.
I don't like. I also there's a couple of players in the team I don't like. I hate putting it out there that I dislike players because with what we do, Mike, there's always a chance. Oh, you get an opportunity to interview this player, right? Like tomorrow, I'm interviewing Keon Coleman of the Bills, which is awesome. It's fun.
Ooh, what if I say right now? Reversal after your whole pre-draft.
I know. And that's what I was thinking. This is what I'm saying. I was thinking about that, and I'm like, dang, I hope he doesn't go back and watch me saying bad things about this guy. And so, I'll say it right here. One of my least favorite players in the NFL, and I look, I'd love to get the chance to talk to the guy. It'd be great. One of my least favorite players in the NFL is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't like him. He comes across to me as someone right, exactly. And I'll say he's probably my least favorite player in the NFL for non oh, you're a criminal reasons, non Deshaun Watson reasons, non stuff like that. I'm not a fan of the Eagles, right? So I will be rooting for the Chiefs. Mike, I don't know if you want to break down the game, if you want to actually analyze certain matchups and stuff. I
want to get to one comment from Brian. He said, I think the flip started with the Chiefs no longer being the best offense in the NFL.
Maybe, because then they're like, oh, Mahomes, I think this yeyear definitely amplified it because a lot of people are like, they got lucky and they're not even the best team.
And if he's throwing 55 touchdowns a year, you're like, okay, it's cool. Like Lamar and Josh Allen the last 2 years have been better statistically,
yes. But I think they've just been better than Mahomes. And I that's not me saying Patrick Mahomes is not a generational quarterback. I just think Allen and Jackson have been better the last 2 years, at least this year, especially.
One thing I don't get, if you want to break down the game, I don't get why Kansas City is the betting favorite at a lot of places. Because I think, and I'm not even being trying to be hyperbolic here, in the last probably 3-4 years, I can't go that far back, I don't think I've seen 1-53 as good a roster as the Eagles. I'm doing draft stuff and mock draft stuff for Fansided. I'm looking what do the Eagles team need? Justin, what do they need? Where are they weak? What's the Eagles' weakness?
They're the most well-rounded team
by a lot.
They're the
linebackers. Yeah. I would have said linebackers, but Zach Bond was an All-Pro this year.
That's great.
The rookies are good corners. The defensive line is. I don't know, it doesn't have stars, but it's just so deep. Bryce Huff doesn't even play, which is kind of sad.
Offensive line is
Offensive
amazing.
line's the best in the league. Saquon.
Yep. Receivers
For
are great.
some reason, Jalen Hurts is becoming like Dak, where people either put him top 3 or 28th in the league because it's just, and I get why it's frustrating because people are like, oh, he has like 40 total touchdowns. Then you look at it and like 11 of them are 1-yard runs. Like I get that, but those count too. You can't not count them. Jalen Hurts to me is, if I did like rank the quarterbacks, I'd probably put him 9th, 10th.
Ooh, I think I'm lower.
Maybe 11, because I mean the running stuff is like, you can't negate that. It's part of him, and
it's valuable.
The problem with him is, I think, and he's a very like the film guys don't like him, and I'm more of a film guy too. But there's a couple throws he's great at, deep ball down the sideline, couple like out rowdy stuff. So they just spam it over and over again, and it works. It's kind of like Jared Goff in a way, where every team that's worked with him, they're like, all right, here's the 4th thing. Jared Goff on this throw has like 100% success rate. Let's just do that over and over again and build our offense out of that. And I get why that's frustrating to these guys, but you know what? He's making plays. Every time I think like, all right, what's he got for? He does something normally. It may not be, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning operating from the pocket, but he's found enough to make it work. So I can't help but respect that a little bit.
I think, well, first, as far as why the Chiefs are favored, I think you kind of nailed it right there when you're talking about Jalen Hurts. Not that Hurts is bad. Hurts is not a bad quarterback. I think he's a average to maybe slightly above average quarterback is probably where I'd rank him. I think I'd rank him around 15, 14 in the NFL. I think when we're talking about why the Chiefs are favored in this game, it's 2 reasons. And it's the 2 reasons that if I'm predicting right now, I would absolutely, without hesitation, pick the Chiefs to win this game. Whenever there's a tiebreaker situation or a big game like the Super Bowl or a playoff game, I look at 2 things. I look at which team has the better quarterback, which team is the better coaching. And to me, the answer for both of those questions is the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, I think everyone would agree, take 1,000 times out of 1,000 over Jalen Hurts to win you the game. If the situation calls for it, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to come through. Jalen Hurts, I don't want the ball necessarily in his hands. And I don't even think the Eagles do. They don't play to have the ball in his hands with the game on the line. They don't want to be trailing. They want to be in the lead. They want to be able to take that lead on you early with Saquon Barkley. They don't want to play from behind. That is not when the Eagles are at their best. And then number 2, it's coaching. And this isn't just Andy Reid versus Nick Sirianni. I trust Steve Spagnuolo to shut down, no, not to shut down, but to do a great job, about as good of a job as anyone can do on Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore. And I think Vic Fangio is a very good defensive coordinator. I trust Andy Reid. I don't know, Matt Nagy. He doesn't even call plays, so what does he even do? I trust Andy Reid over Vic Fangio, and because of that, because I trust the coaching staff of the Chiefs, and because I trust their quarterback more, that's why they're favored, and that's why they have to, in my opinion, be the favorite to win this game, even if on paper clearly they're not a better team. Like overall, well-rounded, absolutely not. The Eagles are stacked, dude. There's a ridiculous team, a ridiculous roster. If the Eagles are going to win this game, which they absolutely can. Like this, it's not a foregone conclusion by any means. But if they're going to win this game, they need to jump out to a hot start. They need to get Saquon going early. They need to not be playing from behind. If the Eagles are behind by 2 scores at any point in this game, I don't think they win. Yep. I do not think they win this game. I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to send these exotic blitz pressures at the right time or blitz packages at the right time at Jalen Hurts. It might confuse him, whatever situation is. I don't think Hurts is a bad quarterback. I just don't think he is someone who is going to win you a Super Bowl on his own accord. I don't think he has that in him. And this is me, like, Jalen Hurts is one of my favorite success stories in the NFL because, dude, you remember his early days at like Alabama. If you told me that man was
Steven Montez was on his same team. It was Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and Steven Montez were on the quarterbacks for team. Steven Montez looked better than him at the Senior Bowl.
It's crazy that he is in the position he is. Going back to his Alabama days, and even when he went to Oklahoma, I didn't think he was an NFL quarterback. I did not think this dude could play quarterback at the NFL level, but he is a perfect example of someone who's gotten better every year after every year.
The new OC every year, too.
Right. And so I respect the hell out of that. And I think he's an awesome success story. I just think he's very limited in what he can possibly do. He is one of the most creative quarterbacks in the NFL, not just what he can do with his legs, but what he can do outside the pocket. The issue is just the decision-making is lapse. There's lapses in decision-making sometimes. His pocket presence is not very good. I don't think his timing and anticipation throwing over the middle of the field is particularly great. Like you said, they kind of spam a lot of the same things for him because they know they have to do that. I think he can make plays and he can create outside of the structure and he can, do some great things. I just don't trust him in that situation to win you a game. And I don't know if that's basic analysis. I don't know if that's too simplistic. I don't know if I sound like, ESPN trying to do this, but that's my take on Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. I think he's good. I think he's a very clear tier below the great and even very good quarterbacks in the
See,
NFL.
I still think the Eagles are going to win this, though. Only because
Really?
it's going to be a
All right.
low score. It's going to be like a 20-17 kind of game. This secondary against Kansas City's wide receivers is an insane mismatch in Philly's favor. So that means the whole passing game is going to be 62-year-old Travis Kelce against Zach Bond. That's the passing game. Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco against that defensive line. That's going to be a mess.
But you're overlooking the fact that Justin Watson's going to catch like 2 touchdowns in this game. Like that, it's shit like that just happens for the Chiefs. Like Noah Gray is going to go.
Tony either.
Noah Gray is going to go for 100 yards. Like somebody that we don't expect to pop off is going to pop off because that's what happens with the Kansas City Chiefs.
This is going to be one of those, like, Mahomes is going to have an amazing game. He'll probably be like, 22 of 33 for 200 yards. And I'm going to have to post that Theo Ash, like, not his fault with Mahomes graphic.
Yeah.
I think it was originally made for Herbert, but it's been photoshopped to, all the Dak, Lamar, all the film god guys. So I'm going to honestly say Eagles, because too, I know the Chiefs are a pretty good run defense. I don't think they're going to slow down Saquon Barkley, or at least to the degree, like, what do you think? He's going to get 50 yards in this game? I don't see that. I think he's going to probably be over 100 again, and pretty much every time he goes over 100, they win.
I think he breaks
bye week. Pretty much every week, he gets 150 yards and they win. I don't see that formula breaking down this time.
I think they're going to do a good enough job, or I think they're going to do a better job than most teams would on them. Obviously, there's Chris Jones, but again, I just trust Steve Spagnuolo a lot. I still don't think that's going to stop him from breaking one. I think Barkley's breaking one. I think he'll end up with over 100 yards, but I think he's going to have like 25 carries in this game. I don't think he's getting 6-7 yards per carry. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll break one 50-yard run or something like that, maybe in the first half, and that'll get Eagles fans all hyped up. I just look, man. I've watched the Chiefs all year, and every game I'm like, well, they're not even that. Like, they're clearly not the best team in the NFL. They have these flaws. They have obvious flaws as a team. And every time they find a way to win. And it's the same thing every year. When you're there every year and you continue to find ways to win, it is hard for me to bet against that.
It's Brady New England, where every data point goes against you, and then they figure it out.
Logically, I'm with you.
God forbid this is a close Chiefs win.
Oh, the worst case scenario is a close Chiefs win with one questionable roughing the passer call at the end of the game.
Or like a holding call that negates a big play or something.
That is absolute worst case scenario, because then I won't be able to even enjoy the sport. Like, it'll just be a conversation about the referees, and I don't want, like, please.
Do you know what would happen if they found out the NFL was throwing games for a team?
See, here's the thing.
First off, how many high-level people would be arrested? The entire integrity of the game would be gone forever. What, to get a few extra shekels out of Taylor Swift? It would ruin the integrity of football. Please get with the program, people.
Here's the thing that people misconstrue, right? Obviously, it's not as simple as like, oh, the NFL's rigging games for the Chiefs. I do think, and I don't know if you agree with this, Mike, especially I'll say when it comes to quarterbacks. I think we can agree probably that there are quarterbacks that get the benefit of the doubt more than other quarterbacks, right? Patrick Mahomes is one of those quarterbacks. He's going to get
a better whistle than Will Levis, of course, but there's no,
get rough into passer calls that Will Levis doesn't get, that Zach Wilson doesn't get, hell, that Lamar Jackson doesn't get. Josh Allen is also like that. In fact, Josh Allen.
Remember how Cam would get like killed every single run and no one calling everything? Cam Newton.
Statistically, by the way, it's so funny to me because Bills fans complain about Mahomes getting all these calls. Statistically, Josh Allen is so much worse. So much worse. I believe I looked at this stat pretty recently. He has
Patriots fans too. Tom Brady never got these calls. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Tom Brady never got calls.
He also never took hits, Brady. That's why.
Do people remember that Breeland Speaks play? That roughing the passer?
Yeah, Chiefs. That was a Chiefs game.
Bang him on the shoulder? Or the one where like he had him wrapped up and then he just let him go and he ran for a touchdown? Of course this stuff happened with Brady.
There was a stat that I saw recently. Yeah, per game, since 2009, there are only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL who have a higher roughing the passer rate per game than Josh Allen. It's not who you'd think at all. It's actually two Jets legends. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh McCown, weirdly enough, are the only two that are higher than Josh Allen.
Well, what does that tell you about Josh McCown?
I don't know. Josh McCown's a flopper, I guess. I don't know. That's the only conclusion I could draw. And per sack, by the way, Fitzpatrick is the only one who's higher. So for some reason, Fitzpatrick was out there getting all these calls. But Allen is second. Mahomes is fourth. Those guys do get the benefit of who's last, by the way. Brock Osweiler and Colin Kaepernick. Well, I feel like there's a discourse there.
Okay, yeah. Let's stay away from that.
Jalen Hurts is fourth
lowest.
So Hurts gets no calls. And then,
is it like a running quarterback thing? Cam Kaepernick?
Yeah. 100%.
But then Allen gets him.
And then Allen gets him. Well, because Allen flops. Allen has this technique. If you watch him, he jerks his head back every time he's hit, and the refs fall for it every time.
Where's Lamar at?
Where is Lamar in that? That's a good question. Let's see. Where's Lamar? Where is Jackson? He's right in the middle, pretty much.
Because he doesn't really get hit too hard for a guy who runs like he does.
Smack dab in between. He's right in the middle between Matt Schaub and Brian Hoyer.
Oh, Texans legends, both of them.
Taysom Hill is on this list,
count.
but he's only had two.
Taysom Hill's a quarterback, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. Jeez.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Jet Press podcast, though, because we are.
Wait. Let's do prediction.
I did my prediction already. Must have missed yours.
What was your final score?
2017 Eagles.
Oh shoot, I missed that. 2017.
I can't see Mahomes throwing for 300 yards against this defense with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy.
I think it's gonna be more high scoring. I think the Eagles have a few defensive lapses, and I think the Chiefs find a way to score 20-something points. So I'll say 28-24 Chiefs win. No, I don't say that. I'll say 27-24.
A big difference there.
No, because I don't think they get 4 touchdowns. I think Butker kicks a couple field goals. That's what.
That would suck too if of all people to decide another Super Bowl.
Yeah, it would be very unfortunate if Harrison. I will. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a reason to not like the Chiefs. Is Harrison Butker.
I know I was talking before that there's a few guys in the Eagles,
but I feel like a lot of people hating on the Chiefs for some stuff probably like Harrison Butker, if you know what I mean.
I 100% agree. And then they'll turn a blind eye to Kareem Hunt and don't care.
So let's before we go into those murky waters over there, thank you for tuning into the Jet Press podcast. You know where to find us on all the platforms. Of course, remember our membership program is just 99 cents. Justin, any final thoughts before the Super Bowl?
I don't know, man. What are your Super Bowl plans? You got any fun plans? You're working the Super Bowl? Oh, sorry to hear that.
It's part of my job, dude.
That's not part of mine. I'm good. I'll be
Jets guy. I'll
be relaxed. All right. Look, if the Jets make the Super Bowl one day, I'll have to work it.
What a horrible fate that would be.
Yeah, I worked the last 2 Bills playoff games. I was helping out covering the Bill side, so I was
enemy territory.
I did my time. But no, I'll be hanging with friends and stuff. You're not watching a game with anyone. Just be sitting alone.
I mean, I might be. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Because I need when I work, I get distracted by TV easily.
Yeah.
People I can just be on my phone and watch a movie. I can't. I gotta watch the movie.
I've gotten better with multitasking because of what we do, but also it's tough for me. I
gotta get in the zone when I'm writing stuff. I can't write for a little bit and then I'll look at the TV for 20 minutes and then I'll write another thing. It takes too long.
I can tell sometimes. Not that we're going on a tangent now, but I could tell sometimes when I wrote something and I was distracted and I read it back and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, or I said the same thing kind of over and over again a few times. So if anyone reads my work and they notice that, probably because I was doing something else while writing. Doesn't happen a lot, but it happens sometimes. Anyway, I hope everyone else has a really good Super Bowl weekend. It's always a fun time. And then after the Super Bowl, we're really kicking into it, man. Free agency will be about a month away from that, and then the draft's right after that. So it's coming up quick. But until next time, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter @Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter @Justin T. Fried. Follow Jet Press, the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can also become a member today. It is 99 cents. You get priority. You get your comments in chat prioritized, and it's a great way to help support the show. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Fried. That is Mike Luciano.
Thanks for sticking with us through all the tech difficulties on this show.